On a drizzly morning in late October, a man named Joe awoke to find his mind twisted into a dark coil of feline obsession. It was a gradual process, like an insidious parasite, gnawing away at the corners of his sanity. He noticed it first when his dreams began to fill with shadowy alleyways where cats lurked, their eyes gleaming with sinister intent. During the days, he would find himself staring out the window, unable to focus on his work as a construction worker. His eyes would drift towards the edges of his vision, searching for the flicker of a feline tail or the soft pad of their paws on the pavement outside. He would spend hours absorbed in cat videos and forums, his heart racing as he devoured the stories of people who claimed to communicate with these enigmatic creatures. The obsession became a gnawing hunger, worming its way into his thoughts and dreams, leaving him restless and uneasy. His wife, Marcy, tried to ignore the strange transformation she saw taking root within her husband. She would often catch him sitting in the dim glow of his computer monitor, the flickering light casting monstrous shadows upon his gaunt face. He seemed to be wasting away, the man she had married disappearing into the abyss of an unfathomable fixation. As days turned into weeks, Joe's preoccupation only deepened. He began to collect strange trinkets and artifacts, items that he believed would bring him closer to the cat world. Ancient Egyptian cat figurines, worn leather collars, and books filled with arcane knowledge about feline behavior filled their once cozy living room, turning it into a museum of cat worship. In his quest for understanding, Joe lost himself. He spent sleepless nights, hunched over his desk, scribbling furiously in a journal filled with arcane symbols and bizarre sketches of cats. His eyes, once warm and loving, now burned with an unhinged intensity, the flame of obsession flickering behind his dilated pupils. The terror began to creep in when Joe started to change physically. He would catch his reflection in the mirror and see something otherworldly staring back at him. His eyes had grown wider, his pupils dilated into enormous black voids, and his once sturdy frame now looked gaunt and fragile. His hands had started to tremble, the nails growing long and curved like claws. And perhaps most disturbingly, he would often find himself crouched on all fours, his spine curved like a feral creature stalking its prey. It was on one such night that Joe, consumed by his obsession, succumbed to the darkness that had enveloped his mind. He lay in bed, listening to the wind howling outside, the rustling of leaves on the pavement like the whispers of cats calling out to him. He closed his eyes, praying for relief from the torment that had become his life. But as sleep finally claimed him, a cold, creeping dread settled over his body, and he knew that the true horror was only just beginning. The first light of dawn crept through the blinds, casting a gray pallor over the room. Joe awoke to an overwhelming sense of disorientation. His body felt strange, alien to him, as if it were no longer his own. He tried to sit up, but instead of the familiar sensation of muscles flexing and bones creaking, he felt a fluid, agile motion. Panic surged through him as he looked down at himself. His once human body was now covered in a thick, mottled fur. His arms and legs had shortened, his hands and feet replaced by paws tipped with sharp claws. He was a cat, a grotesque and overweight feline, trapped within the confines of his own home. A wave of terror washed over him, making his newfound whiskers bristle. As he attempted to move, he found that the grace and agility cats were known for had been stripped from him. His excessive weight made his limbs heavy and uncooperative, each motion a laborious struggle. He could barely muster the strength to crawl towards the bedroom door, the horror of his situation amplifying with each agonizing step. In the hallway, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in a full-length mirror. The sight was horrifying. His feline face twisted into an expression of despair and anguish. The reflection of his own eyes, once human and warm, now stared back at him with an unnatural, predatory gleam. It was then that he heard it, the soft footsteps of his wife Marcy approaching from the kitchen. He could hear her humming a familiar tune, a haunting melody that sent shivers down his fur-covered spine. He knew he had to find a way to communicate with her, to make her understand the nightmarish reality he had found himself in. But as Marcy rounded the corner and saw her husband in his grotesque, feline form, her eyes widened in terror. She stumbled back, her hands flying to her mouth to suppress a scream. It was clear to Joe that she could not recognize him, that she saw him as nothing more than a monstrous intruder in their home. Marcy's fear turned to revulsion and disgust as she backed away from Joe, her heart pounding in her chest. She looked at him with a cold, calculating gaze, as if she were weighing the life of this hideous creature against the safety and care of her family. The decision was made in an instant. Joe, now able to read the murderous intent in Marcy's eyes, knew that he had to flee. His cumbersome form struggled to move quickly, but the sheer terror of his predicament lent him a desperate strength. He stumbled towards the living room, his heart hammering in his chest as he heard Marcy's footsteps pursuing him. He managed to find refuge behind the heavy curtains, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he watched his wife's shadow move ominously through the room. She was searching for him, her determination to end his life as a twisted, overweight cat driving her every action. Joe knew he could not stay hidden forever. He had to find a way to survive, to escape the horrors that awaited him at the hands of his own wife. And so, as the darkness of night began to fall once more, Joe prepared himself to venture into the unknown, to face the terrifying world that had become his prison. As he slipped out into the night, the chilling wind tore at his fur, whispering of the horrors that lay ahead. But Joe had no choice. He must confront his new reality, a life as a grotesque feline, forever hunted by the woman he once loved. He would have to learn to navigate the shadows, to embrace the dark existence that had been forced upon him. And so he slunk into the darkness, his once human heart filled with fear, desperation, and a terrible, all-consuming loneliness. The world outside Joe's home was an entirely different realm from what he had known as a man. The scents and sounds were amplified. The damp earth and the distant howl of the wind, both soothing and haunting. The inky blackness of the night was now a canvas painted with shades of gray, the shadows dancing with malevolent intent. As he moved through the streets, his flabby body aching with every step, he found himself drawn to the alleys and hidden corners where cats gathered. These feline gatherings were eerie, their eyes glowing like embers in the darkness, their whispers carrying on the wind like the secrets of the damned. Joe felt a strange kinship with these creatures, an undeniable connection forged in the fires of his own tormented transformation. But he also sensed their wariness, their mistrust of the outsider who wore their form, but still reeked of humanity. He would spend his days hiding in the shadows, watching the world of humans from a distance, his heart aching with a profound sense of loss. He longed for the warmth of his wife's embrace, the laughter of his children, the simple pleasures that had once filled his life. But now, those joys were forever out of reach, replaced by a never-ending nightmare of survival. As the weeks wore on, Joe found himself adapting to his new life. He learned the language of the cats, the subtle flicks of their tails, and the low, guttural growls that conveyed their emotions. He grew adept at hunting, stalking the rats and pigeons that populated the city's underbelly. And he found solace in the company of his fellow felines, their whispered stories of life on the fringes of human society, providing a sense of belonging he had never imagined possible. But still, the specter of Marcy haunted him. He could not shake the memory of her eyes, filled with hatred and revulsion as she hunted him through their home. He knew that she would never stop, that she would continue to hunt him until she had wiped his monstrous existence from the face of the earth. And so, he was forced to remain ever vigilant, to navigate the treacherous terrain of his new life with the constant knowledge that death lurked just around every corner. It was during one of his midnight forays that Joe stumbled upon a hidden sanctuary, a place where cats like him could gather in relative safety. It was a small, abandoned building, its crumbling walls and broken windows providing shelter from the unforgiving world outside. And within its decaying walls, he found a community of outcasts, creatures who had been rejected by both the human and feline worlds. He was welcomed into their fold, his strange appearance and tragic story earning him a place among their ranks. In their company, Joe found a sense of peace he had not felt since his transformation. He was no longer alone, no longer an outcast condemned to wander the shadows in fear. But as he grew more comfortable in his new life, Joe could not ignore the ever-present question that gnawed at his soul. Could he truly accept his fate, to live as a cat for the rest of his days? Or was there some way, some hidden path back to the life he had lost? His search for answers would lead him to the very heart of the feline world, a place where darkness and mystery collided to create a labyrinth of secrets and hidden truths. It was there that Joe would face his greatest challenge, a test that would force him to confront the darkness within himself and make a choice that would change the course of his existence forever. The labyrinth was an ancient, hidden catacomb beneath the city, a place where the feline world's most closely guarded secrets lay buried. It was said that within its twisting corridors, one could find the answers to every question, the key to every locked door, and the path to every lost soul. But the journey was fraught with danger, its shadows teeming with unspeakable horrors that preyed upon those who dared to venture into its depths. Armed with nothing but his wits and the whispers of the cats who had guided him to this place, Joe descended into the labyrinth. The air was thick with the scent of decay, the suffocating darkness pressing in on him. The walls seemed to close in around him, the winding passages leading him deeper and deeper into the heart of the abyss. As he ventured further into the darkness, Joe encountered the denizens of the labyrinth, twisted creatures born of nightmare and despair. They were the outcasts of the feline world, their forms twisted by the dark magic that permeated the catacombs. They whispered secrets to Joe, their voices like the rustle of dead leaves on a cold, moonless night. With each step, Joe felt himself drawn closer to the dark heart of the labyrinth, the gnawing hunger for answers driving him onward. He faced countless trials, his body battered and his spirit tested by the horrors that lay in wait within the shadows. But through it all, he clung to the hope that he would find a way to reclaim his humanity, to return to the life he had lost. At last, he arrived at the center of the labyrinth, a chamber shrouded in darkness and haunted by the echoes of 1,000 whispered secrets. It was there that he found the truth he had been seeking, a terrible revelation that would shake the very foundations of his world. The transformation that had befallen him was not a curse, but a gift. He had been chosen by the feline world to serve as their emissary, a bridge between the realms of man and cat. It was a burden he had been destined to bear, a fate that had been written in the stars since the day he was born. With this knowledge weighing heavy on his heart, Joe was faced with a decision that would define the course of his existence. He could accept his fate, embracing the darkness and the power it offered, forever walking the line between the worlds of man and cat. Or he could reject the gift, choosing instead to wander the earth as a lost soul, forever haunted by the life he had left behind, and possibly try to find his way back to Marcy and his once human form. As the shadows of the labyrinth closed in around him, Joe made his choice. He would walk the path of darkness, a creature of the night forever torn between two worlds. And as he embraced his new destiny, he knew that the trials he had faced within the labyrinth were only the beginning. a prelude to the true task that awaited him in the shadows. Man cannot understand cat, and cat cannot understand man. Joe now will serve as that bridge. And so Joe, once a man and now a monstrous overweight cat, vanished into the darkness, his name a whispered legend among the creatures that stalked the night. His story, a chilling tale of obsession, transformation, and the terrible price of power, would live on as a warning to all who dared to venture into the shadows, a reminder of the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface of our world.